Joining us now to discuss is Warwick Capital Chief Investment Officer Brian Tehako. Welcome, Brian, to the show.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you. So I was hoping you can comment on that Basel Committee. They're asking banks to increase capital requirements for Bitcoin exposure. They're cautioning against the risks of Bitcoin, but by acknowledging Bitcoin, they're sort of giving it legitimacy. Could you weigh in here?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody is trying to figure out the right route to go. And when you're dealing with something that is deemed potentially an asset or something deemed a currency, you're going to have these kind of bank type of issues. And I think what they proposed is great. If a bank's going to hold it, it's basically looking like they have to fully collateralize it, which is fine. The cryptocurrency market right now is the biggest issue is people being over leveraged. And I think they're just trying to be weighing on the cautious side. But it's great that they acknowledged it and they acknowledged it as an asset.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned over-leveraged, and we saw that U.S. lawmakers are criticizing Bitcoin. In fact, Senator Elizabeth Warren was commenting on the volatility. Former President Donald Trump also made comments they finally agree on something, that Bitcoin is basically no good. Do you see headwinds for Bitcoin coming from governments?
You're going to see it from certain governments and certain not, where there's threats, right? There's two different angles. Is it a threat or does it help? When you talk about El Salvador in a situation like that, it's going to help. When you're talking about a country like the United States where the dollar is the dominant currency, it's going to hurt them. Senator Warren, I think, doesn't really understand the use of the Lightning Network and the use of a currency where you can do basically proof of stake versus proof of work. The fluctuation of the currency isn't going to be as sensitive to that. So there's a big difference between, again, is it a currency or is it an asset? That's where we're going to see the rub, right? So going down that little line of thinking, you're saying that if you're at the grocery store and a grocer accepts some money, $100 or whatever for groceries, they don't have to worry that tomorrow the Bitcoin that they received is $50 tomorrow. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that, right? And that's what Jack Mallers and the guys at the Lightning Network and everybody that's working on this at Strike, that's what they're trying to figure out, and where that volatility doesn't come into play. I've been kind of down this road numerous times with Bitcoin and going, okay, is it going to be a currency? Is it not? Is it going to be an asset?
Well,
is it going to be a store?
How are they doing that with the volatility, though? How are they going to manage that volatility?
It's instantly settled, right? It's instantly settled. So you're not going to have that volatility. You don't have to wait for the network. You don't have to wait 24 hours to basically redeem it or move it back. And again, as a store owner,
but could it actually, go against? We had a huge pullback in the crypto markets. Could it be something that could stabilize the 40% drop we've seen in the crypto markets in these past few weeks?
And everything is what's happening right now is we're in an adoption period, right? So it's the same thing as you go back to the tech days. You're going to have volatility when something is new. As time goes on and the market figures out where we are, that volatility will stabilize. Obviously, as traders, we like volatility, but again, if you're using it as a currency, that is the main concern. If you're using it as a store of value and we're trying to figure out the supply and demand of it, then that's where it's going to be a volatile product. But if you can smooth that out, you can smooth that out.
Fair enough. As the market matures, perhaps we'll see a bit more stability. But Senator Warren doesn't have a point in the sense that right now there is volatility, and that has to be addressed somehow. You mentioned El Salvador, and they're the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. And sources say India is warming up to crypto after attempting to ban it. So is this the seed that will grow into a field of countries accepting Bitcoin in the future?
Yeah, I think we look at it as the stallions out of the barn, right? It's out and it's running, and it's hard to people to kind of corral it and get it back in there. And I think when you start seeing it across, South American countries, they're looking at it as a way of financial freedom. And it's a way for them to fight their inflation and their currency. But you still have the issue of El Salvador is treating it, again, as a legal tender, as a currency, where India is coming out and saying we're going to deem it as an asset. Again, there's kind of, those are the two big differentials, right? The same thing in the US. We deem it as a commodity and we tax it that way, where El Salvador is saying, no, we're going to treat it as a currency, no tax, and you're able to transact with it. So we're fighting kind of two battles here, and everybody's trying to figure out how to classify it and where, where are we going to end up?
Speaking of battles, the IMF is talking about legal, financial, and economic issues that can arise for El Salvador in adopting Bitcoin. The IMF exerts considerable influence. El Salvador is seeking a $1 billion loan from the fund, basically. How do you expect these influences between dominant nations and developing countries playing out?
That's going to be very difficult, right? And it's going to be interesting to see where that comes down the road. And, maybe El Salvador doesn't care. Maybe they see a better future in Bitcoin versus they do being, backed by the IMF. That's going to be where it kind of comes down to play, and people are going to have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. You also have a...
those are big risks, right? That's the financial freedom part, right? Those are the big risks, and people are going to have to make those decisions for their country.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a chart that you brought on with us. It's the Bitcoin daily candle chart. Bitcoin is trading sideways between 30 and 40K. Do you anticipate a breakout further up or further down?
So basically on this daily chart, we use moving averages. If you can see, the purple line is our 5-day moving average. We got above that yesterday, which was a big deal. We've been in a bearish momentum chart, and currently we're trading just above the 20-day moving average at 36,500. If we can hold above that, we'll start to turn momentum a little bit up. And our next target would be to our 200-day moving average, which is the yellow line up above. So if we can push towards that, we can take a shot at 42,000. And this 36,500 is a big area for us to settle above today.